what are we going to be looking at today? So we're going to discuss different ways to exercise outside of the rehab center setting, describe ways to keep yourself safe while exercising. Very pertinent exercise that we talk about exercise in hot weather, because it has been stinking hot the past little while. And looking ahead on the weather, I noticed that we're back up into the 30s again. So we want to talk to you about some ways to make sure that you're safe when you're doing that. And then some new technology that you can take advantage to keep you going. So when we're looking at the exercise, what can I do? Well, there's a ton of different options. I can tell you I like getting out on using York Region's trails. Right from the start, when the weather got nice, the trails were open, and they have been open. There's just a whole bunch of signs reminding you to social distance, do things properly that way, but the trails are open. So if you can get outside and take advantage of it in the cooler weather, as we're going to talk about in a little bit, that is one definite option. You can also be exercising at home, as a lot of people that wanted to keep some sort of routine going have developed a routine. Dave's in here as the moderator, and he was saying today that a lot of people he were talking to really stayed with their program. So for those of you who have done it, you have found a way to do it. Wow, we're impressed, and congratulations for doing that. If you haven't, because you haven't, known what you can do or whatnot, get in touch with us. We can help you through that, and hopefully this talk will help you a little bit. So some of the at-home options, again, walking outside. Seeing a lot of people out walking, and I think the message of being fit is out there. We know that the people who have, let's just say, fared better if they did develop the COVID-19 virus, if you were a little bit fitter, you did seem to have a better outcome. So we want you to stay fit and stay healthy. I mean, here's just another reason to stay fit and stay healthy. So walking outside is a great idea, as long as you are doing that physical distancing, as we were talking about. If you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, that's great. But remember, that's more to protect others from you. Okay? You still have to be careful yourself. And again, we're going to talk about temperature and humidity in a little bit if you're outside. Inside is walking in your house. There's a lot of exercise videos, online exercise sessions. We're going to start doing some. So keep your eyes open on your weekly schedule for when we have some of those coming up. You can do the resistance training. If you're here and you're watching, you've been with our program, and you've at least been to our track trial where we give out the bands. So we've given you something to help out. And if you've got things at home, anywhere from tin cans to dogs to grandchildren, finding things to add a little bit of resistance training, not a bad idea. You can take advantage of that. It's also interesting, one thing that we don't hear a lot of in the summer, we do these talks twice a year. And when we talk about exercising outside of the program, we have a lot of people in the winter will talk about going to a mall to do their exercise. It is something you can still do in the summer. It's going to be air conditioned. It's going to be a safe place to go and exercise. And my understanding is that the malls are open, so it is an option. But again, that's where you are going to have to be very vigilant in trying with the social distancing. So moving over to the physical response to hot weather. Really, in a nutshell, the thing to remember is anytime that the weather gets to an extreme, so whether the temperature is an extreme high or an extreme low, your body is making adaptations to be out in the environment. So not even exercise, just simply being out in the environment, your body is under stress, under duress, however you want to look at it, and is already starting to ramp up and work a little bit harder. So when you add in the exercise and the stress on your body that the exercise causes, it really ramps up the intensity. And a lot of times that's what makes things tough. For example, I'm going to go the opposite direction here. In the winter, I'm sure a lot of you realize that snow shoveling is not a good thing. Now, first off, the actual physical activity part of snow shoveling is tough. But it's also the cold air that leads to the problems, right? So if you're out for a simple walk, and we've got a picture here of somebody out for a run or a light jog, in normal weather, that might be perfectly fine. But as soon as it gets hot, his body is working a lot harder. So what's happening, you can see the picture of the sweat. And if you remember what's happening there is the body is bringing that sweat up to the surface to help with cooling the body, right? The actual act of that sweat evaporating helps keep everything cool. But the problem is that can lead to dehydration. If you are starting to get dehydrated, then the body will start to pull some of that fluid out of your blood, out of the blood, right, to help with hydration. So all of these things going on is really going to ramp up the intensity. So we need to keep that in mind as we're out exercising. So that's some things we want you to remember here. We're also going to have a temperature chart in a couple of slides. So the results of overheating, increased heart rate. When the body is pulling fluid out of the blood is going to get thicker. But what's also happening is you are starting to lose some blood volume. When you lose some blood volume, the heart has to beat a little bit harder. So that increased heart rate. There's also just a simple fact that your body's working harder trying to cool itself as well as do the exercise. So with all of that extra intensity, you can see that can lead to some excessive fatigue. The excessive fatigue can lead into some skipped beats. It can lead into the lightheadedness from simply getting too hot, from having the blood volume go down. And if you're getting lightheaded, it's the dizziness, right? So you can see all of this ties in, right? So some of the simple results of the overheating. So staying hydrated. First off, we aren't going to make a general statement like you need to drink this much water in this amount of time. We aren't going to say that because some of our people are going to be on a fluid restricted diet. So we're not going to make that blanket statement. The biggest thing to remember is throughout the day, stay hydrated. Because if you start an exercise session, even a little bit dehydrated, drink all you want. Your body's probably still going to stay in a dehydrated situation because it takes about 24 hours to recover from a dehydrated point. So the secret to hydration is staying hydrated throughout the day. Before you exercise, drink a little bit of water. Again, this is a message where you have to keep in mind if you are on a fluid restricted diet, take all of these suggestions, with a, sorry, I was going to say with a grain of salt, but you know what I mean. You have to stay within those parameters of what you have to adhere to if you're on that fluid restricted diet. But anyways, before you exercise is a great time to have a glass of water. Make sure you're starting at least with the tank topped up. As you're exercising, if you're starting to feel thirsty, drink some exercise. Okay. One thing that can happen, probably not to you in particular, because we're not asking any of our participants to do any extreme exercise, but there is the possibility that you can actually overhydrate yourself, which leads to some dire consequences if it gets bad. So the biggest thing is to make sure you're hydrated throughout the day, drinking as you get thirsty while you're exercising, have the water ready and available. Okay, so some of the things that can come on, heat cramps. So occurring in the calves, abdomen, usually as a result of the sodium starting to reduce in the body, certain electrolytes can be reducing, and you start to get some of these heat cramps. The next step, heat exhaustion. When you're exposed to high temperatures and you're not replacing your fluids, the heat cramps can move over to that heat exhaustion. Oftentimes you're going to notice that you're feeling quite fatigued. Why they call it heat exhaustion, right? So a lot of that fatigue, weakness is going to leave you feeling dizzy, short of breath. If it's bad enough, it can lead to some nausea, to vomiting as well. Where it becomes an actual medical emergency is when you get to the heat stroke phase. Your body temperature has actually risen. You're now above the 39 degrees. You may feel unbalanced, unsteady, disoriented. You just can't keep yourself going. And one of the really cool things about this is you may even notice, you might be confused, but you may not recognize that things are bad because you might think, well, I'm not really sweating, so it can't be that bad. Well, that's actually a sign of heat stroke where your body isn't sweating any longer. So if you see that happening, or if you sense this happening, if you see the heat cramps, okay, start to pay attention at that point. If you start to feel excessively fatigued, please stop, get yourself out of those hot conditions. Cool off quickly, you know, drink some water, pour some over your head. Okay, if you see anybody out, you know, if you're with somebody or you just happen to be out yourself and you see somebody struggling, realize that once they get to that point, it is a medical emergency, and you can do a lot to help them. Practicing safe sun, let's look at the clothing. So generally the synthetics are better, because what it does, the cotton will maintain a lot of your sweat, which cools down the evaporation process. So it cools down the natural cooling process of the body. So that's where the synthetics, like the dry fits, are really beneficial. Loose clothing, a lighter color, right? So you know, the whites as opposed to blacks and darks. Certain medications can cause some problems. If you have any questions about that, talk to your pharmacist. Okay, if you're noticing that you're not able to tolerate the heat like maybe you used to, talk to your pharmacist and see if any of your medications or a combination of your medications might be posing some troubles for you there. Sunscreen, not a bad idea, right? Making sure that you're not getting burnt. Also, look at the time of day. I think most of us are aware that midday is a time when you really have to be aware. They're now starting to say that it might extend a little bit later into the day than what we used to think. We used to say kind of 10 to 2 used to be, or 11 to 2. Might be times when you wanted to stay out. They're extending a little bit only because most of us live in a little bit of the urban jungle, and that urban jungle heats up as the day goes by, so it may retain some of the heat. So we're going to get to the temperatures and humidexes and everything, but keep in mind, earlier in the morning, later in the day are your best times. And now we come to alcohol. Always the topic in the summer that people are curious about. Alcohol, it's kind of a double whammy, unfortunately. If you are drinking, first off, we know it might impair your judgment. So you might not notice the heat cramps, moving heat exhaustion, moving to heat stroke. So it might be clouding your perceptions a little bit of what's going on. And because alcohol is a diuretic, you might not realize that you are peeing maybe a little bit more than what you would normally be doing. So you are losing some of the hydration out of your body. So if you are going to be drinking, if it's hot, please be careful. Tips to stay safe. So a couple things here. The heat index, air quality index, we're going to touch base on that in a second. We've got those on some slides for you. As mentioned, the exercise at dusk or dawn. Allow for acclimatization. Some of us naturally acclimatize a little bit quicker to different extremes in the environment. You know, people who can get out and exercise and do things in the heat, my hat's off to you. I am not one of those people. I am one of those people that seems to tolerate the winter a little bit better. Maybe all the years living in Ottawa helped with that, but for whatever reason, you do have to allow yourself time to acclimatize, even if you are a person who does acclimatize to either of the extremes a little better than most. So don't rush it, okay? Give your body at least a week to get used to the weather conditions, okay? And ease your way into them. Also decreasing intensities and paces, you know, durations, just go a little bit easier, because again, when the temperature is at an extreme, the higher the lows, remember that you're getting the increased intensity by the body adapting to the environment. So that will just naturally increase the pace and duration. So you may even notice that even very quickly, because your body is working a little bit harder, that if you slow your pace down, you might still be getting the same heart rates, because the heart's working on both fronts, on the adaptation as well as the exercise. So here we are. So watching the temperature. So again, think about yourself. I know personally that as soon as it gets into the higher 20s, I'm now starting to feel less comfortable when I'm exercising. Okay, so think about yourself here, but as a general guideline, less than, and you should do this, put a caveat on this, even if you're a person who is a best case scenario and does well in the summer, you should still be looking at these as a guideline. So anything less than the 30 degrees, we are going to consider it to be safe. Okay, so not likely to have any discomfort while you're doing it. 30 to 39 degrees, and I have even seen 30 to 35 degrees, that alert phase where there's potential for some discomfort. So that's where you want to be decreasing your outdoor activity, slowing the pace, being aware of symptoms, all the stuff we've been talking about. Once it gets to 40, for sure, that is where it gets into the danger area. Okay, we really say you should not be outside exerting yourself at all in those conditions. Okay, and once it gets to over that 45, that's where it does become an emergency, where it is looking as dangerous. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of times with these higher temperatures that we're going to be getting smog. We here in Newmarket, if you've been living here for a little while, you may have noticed that the smog from the GTA is creeping towards us. And I do believe it was about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5, that it was the first time there was actually a smog alert up in Simcoe, Muskoka counties. So it is spreading. So this is that brownish haze that you see. That haze is the air pollutants. Usually May to September are the worst months. Now, what are they going to cause you? Well, even if you have good lungs, you may find that you're getting irritated, and they may cause a little bit of a cough. And so we really definitely want you to be careful with that. Usually you're going to hear about it in 2 different ways. They might call it a smog advisory, where there's a strong chance elevated smog levels are forecast to occur within the next 24 hours. Okay, so that's where you have to be thinking and maybe planning ahead if you do have any respiratory issues, if you have COPDs or any of the emphysemas. That's where you might have to start to come up with alternate plans. The smog watch, there's a 50% chance that elevated smog levels are forecast to occur in the next 3 days. So be aware, but at that point you might not be thinking, okay, I might have to actually change up plans. This is pretty cool. This was developed with the help of York Region Public Health, and they paired in with a couple of other of the public health regions and developed this. They actually even have, so they've got the website, and if you go to that website and you poke around, you'll see that they actually, it's what they were working on, and I believe they have it, that there's an app that if you do have respiratory issues, you can actually sign up for the app, and daily it will tell you what the air quality is. I think it will tell you both what it is forecast to be and what it actually is at that live moment. So if you do have those issues and you wanted to know, this is a great reference for you. So that airqualityontario.com. Sorry, mention here, you've probably been looking, so you can see here, right, that just where the risks are. So knowing how you are with handling any of that, you know, if you have emphysema, COPD, any respiratory issues, even a moderate number might be something that you're going to notice. Indoor exercise equipment. So generally, this is a conversation that we get into quite extensively in the colder months, but because of COVID, a lot of people have been looking at and purchasing their indoor exercise equipment so they can continue with routines at home. So a lot of people will be, these are usually the 3 most popular. So the bicycle on the left there, that's an upright bike. There's also the recumbent bikes where you're sitting on more of a chair with your legs out in front of you a little bit more. Some of you may have or at least seen those. The treadmill, very popular, as well as the elliptical machine on the right. Costs for some of these things. Treadmill can anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000. It can even go higher depending on just all the different features that you want to get. Similar prices for elliptical. You might be able to get one a little bit cheaper, but they can get quite exorbitant in the price as well. Bikes usually aren't going to get quite as high. Maybe about $3,000 will be your upper limit. And again, you can find some good ones that will allow you to get your exercise in and around the $200 mark. So looking at all of these, it's really going to come down to how much do you want to get on it, right? What are all these different bells and whistles? They can be picked up anywhere. You've probably noticed them when you're shopping at Walmart, Canadian Tire, just about anywhere you're going to see them. There's also the specialty shops, name here like the Treadmill Factory. Others are escaping me right now, but they're just about everywhere. You can also get them on Kijiji, eBay's. You can see quite a bit of them will be out there for sale, through these places where you can buy them secondhand from people who have already purchased them. So what are you going to look for? The biggest thing is make sure it's safe. Okay, is it actually going to be something that's going to work for you? Okay. Also suggest just that. If you are an avid cyclist, you might be out riding your bike all summer and whatnot, then actually maybe the treadmill might be good because it gives you that change of pace. Or maybe you hate the treadmill so much that, yeah, you would actually prefer to stay on a bike, for 12 months of the year. So riding outside when you can, inside when you have to. Think about that, okay, what your preference is, because quite often we have participants that will go out and they'll buy something, and a few months later, it's mostly a clothes hanger, so that they're using it to dry their clothes. Delivery and setup is something you want to pay attention to. We had one of our participants purchase something at a very reputable place, and they paid for delivery. Well, they were a little bit shocked when they found out that the delivery guy had to drop it into their driveway. All he was asking was that they put it into his garage. They couldn't. They could not cross any threshold. So the threshold that meant they were going into the home. So find out exactly what it is that you're going to be getting if you are paying for delivery and setup. So does setup mean that they are actually going to put it in whatever room you want? So if you wanted to go all the way in the house down into the basement, are they going to be able to do that for you, as well as set it up for you in that location? Comparison shopping, consumer reviews, consumer reports. Not a bad place to start, right? You can look online and get a lot of information. You can go to the Walmart's Canadian Tires, you can go to their websites, and what's really cool is on those websites, there will be reviews, right? So you can look at reviews and see what other people are saying about them. Okay, so not a bad thing to do some of that comparison shopping online. The bells and whistles, that's really going to come down to personal preference. Think about exactly what it is that you really require on it. The vast majority of the folks in our program are looking for something that, let's use treadmill as an example, that they're just going to get on, start it, and do their walk, right? You don't need 20 pre-programmed things on there with cameras and plugins and everything else, right? So look at what you want. I'm not saying those plugins and everything else are bad if that's what you want. If that's something that's going to keep you using it more, go for it. So myself, I do enjoy riding my bike through the summer. In the winter, I was tending more to go to the treadmill because I did want that change. But recently, I now have an app and a sort of a smart trainer and everything else. We're actually going to feature it on one of our home exercise talks. But I've got that, and that keeps me going. So if that is the kind of thing that you enjoy, it's kind of like the Fitbits and everything we're going to be talking about. If those kind of things help keep you going, go for it. It's money well spent if it's going to keep you going. I mean, we're talking about your health here, right? So it's money well spent if you do spend a little bit more on something that's going to keep you using it. So tips to stay safe, the rating of perceived exertion, so that RPE. So you might remember that from the exercise logs. For those of you, we've had a couple of people when we were chatting with them say that they ran out of the exercise logs, they really like them. Just a reminder, if you look through your book, I've forgotten exactly what page it's on, but we actually have a copy in there. So if you pull out that spiral bound book that we gave you, there actually is your exercise log in there. On that, you see that rated and perceived exertion, the 6-20 scale. Reminder that we want you about 11 to 14. So that sweet spot right in the middle. Looking at environmental factors, so all of that stuff we were chatting about, from temperature to the smog, all of these different things. Also just making sure that you're safe. So earlier I mentioned York Region has their trail systems open. So you know, I really like the Mackenzie King Estate trails. They can be a little bit unsafe, right? The unsafe footing in certain areas because some of the elevation changes and whatnot. So just pay attention to all of that stuff and make sure that you're safe, you're ready to handle it. Physical distancing, again, remembering all of that. Simcoe County, they went to a mask requirement. I think it was on Monday it took place, that it became something you had to do on Monday, or came into effect. So I'm looking for, I believe York Region, it takes effect tomorrow, that you have to be masking. Now, if you're outside, you are okay, but if you are inside anywhere, if you are, you know, doing some walking at the malls or whatnot, I believe they are going to be insistent that you do have a mask on. Any questions too? Even though we've had to make this switch over to a virtual program, we don't want you to feel alone. We don't want you to think you don't have that access to the exercise therapist that you were working with. Unfortunately, we're not seeing you as regularly as we used to, but we are still available. So please, if you've got any questions, give us a call, send us an email. Just remember that if you are giving us a call, we still aren't back in the Magna Center. So you will be leaving a message, but we are all checking our machines, okay? So if you do have any questions, let us know. Another quick little thing, if your exercise therapist was talking to you about your METS level, it's page 23 of your workbook. Another little form in there, page in there that you might want to look at to see the activities you're doing, how everything's looking. Measuring your route. Most of our participants, if they're out doing walks, the majority of them are kind of walking around their blocks or have a set route, you know, that they just go right out the front door from home. So pretty easy to just jump in your car and drive around and see what the distance is. Back at the Magna Center, we do have a surveyor's wheel. We don't have access to it now, but it is an option once we do get back there if you really wanted to know the exact distance. You can push that around the neighborhood as you go for a walk and see what your neighbors say. There's a lot of really cool internet maps. This one we've got listed here, the GMAP dash pedometer is a good one. You can get on Google Earth, and what's really cool is you can actually plot points on Google Earth, and it can be used for anything. Dave sitting beside me here will laugh. I am a reluctant triathlete because I am not the greatest of swimmers. So one of the races that I'd signed myself up for, I was a little panicky about the swim. So I actually pulled up Google Earth and was able to look at the waypoints and see the swim. So it is kind of a neat thing to use as well. If you were planning a trip anywhere, you can look around and plan some nice walks. Also the fitness trackers and apps. So we're going to talk about that in the next slides here. So we won't spend too much time, but they really are becoming really popular. We're seeing a lot of the fitness trackers and apps being used by you guys. So another thing to keep in mind, if you find one really good, please let us know, because we'd love to get feedback on what is, well, actually both sides of the coin. If something is working and isn't working, if you can let us know, because then we can put it out there to everybody else. So the different activity trackers, so your basic Fitbits, Garmin, Polar, there's quite a few different companies now that are making these, that have them out there. They're going to track things. They're going to track your the number of steps, as well as if you're doing any stair climbing, and those are pretty accurate. Exercise and active minutes, how many calories that you're burning. Some are even advanced that they can look at how much sleep you're getting. So really nice to know if that sort of thing does motivate you, right? So Garmin used the catchphrase "beat your yesterday," And it's pretty cool if that does help motivate you, right? If at the end of the day you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh crap, I'm at 9,700 steps. I'm going to need 300 more steps to get in my 10,000. So that might be that motivation you need to get back out and do a little bit, right? So again, no source of bad motivation. Training trackers usually a little bit more involved in that a lot of these will have things like GPS. The heart rate in these are usually a little bit more accurate. Unfortunately, the Fitbits and whatnot, where it's just pulling the information off of your wrist, can be a little bit sketchy. What we have found is usually your resting heart rate is going to be pretty good. It's going to be almost bang on. So once you start to exercise, that sometimes it goes a little bit higher than what it actually truly is. So what we showed you of putting fingers to pulse on the wrist. If you can do that, that's pretty fail safe. So it allows you to check and get to know if your tracker is accurate for you. Let's go look at lap times, the all-day tracker features as well. So it will be looking at things like calories, steps. It can do all of that as well. What are you going to look for? Find something stylish, something that fits you well. The display is big enough that you can actually read what is on that display. Compatibility with different devices, so some will tie into certain phones or not different phones or computer systems, so look at compatibility. Again, check out accuracy. Around here we've noticed that some definitely are more accurate than others. It wouldn't be fair for me really to say which, but there are some that are a little bit more so accurate than others, but unfortunately, usually you're paying a little bit more for those things. Okay, so keep that in mind. Battery life, it's going to last. The battery's going to last long enough for the different activities that you're doing. So if it is something that you want it to be tracking your, everything that you're doing during the day, as well as tracking your sleep, well, that's not going to really work for you if you've got to be charging the battery all night to get what you want to see during the day. So decide what it is exactly you want to do, and that'll help you know, is it compatible with the different things you want to do? Is the battery lasting long enough? And do you need the water protection? Most are going to protect you from sweat, from things like if you get caught out in the rain. Most things will protect you from that, but if you want to wear it for, say, a swim workout, whether it be doing laps or if you're doing aquafit classes, anytime that you're in the water, you want to be making sure that whatever you have isn't going to be affected by the water. Then you've got all the different apps. Okay. Again, we've seen a number of our participants using some of these different things. Things like the Strava, it's showing a shoe on there, so you can use it for walking, for running, for cycling. There is Map My Run, which Map My Run became very successful and is now owned by Under Armour. So, it's pretty accurate, pretty good. If you've got somebody like Under Armour saying, yep, they're endorsing this to the point of actually purchasing it. So lots of these different apps. The majority of them are free, so you can get on and start to use them free, and then, of course, if you want to add the bells and whistles, that might add a little bit. We've got the Apple on there. If you have an Apple Watch, you'll notice that you've got some apps built right into your Apple phone, your iPhone, that you can access. There's a lot of different apps on a lot of the different tablets and smartphones. It's not just Apple. So again, decide what you want to do, look around, get onto the app stores and play with it. And again, if you find something that's really garbage, let us know. If you find something that works really well, let us know, so we can pass some of those along to some of you. All right, that's about all we're going to cover for today. If you do have any questions, let us know. I'm looking over at Dave. Dave's watching to see if there's any questions here. Nothing's come up at this point. So I'm going to buy a little bit of time just in case. But yeah, the biggest thing right now is find a way to keep yourself moving, to be as active as you can. A lot of us have been under a lot of stress because times have really changed, and there's a lot of stresses coming at us from a lot of different angles. Sandy, our social worker, gave a fantastic talk today on just that, on the coping with the COVID-19 and how it's affected a lot of people. So if you weren't able to catch it, get back and look at the schedule that we sent you, and click on that link and it'll take you to the recorded version. So if you've been stressed out, really go and watch it, okay? There's tips on there to, first off, just so you know you're not alone. It's out there. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of extra stress, but Sandy's message also will help you in how to deal with some of it. So the exercise is important because it helps you deal with the stress. It's going to help you sleep. But moderate exercise, not crazy exercise, light to moderate exercise will help improve your immune system. So that's what we're all after right now, because if we did develop a sickness, whether it be COVID or anything else, we want to fare as good as we can. We don't want to have a negative outcome. So any exercise is going to help you with that. But please keep in mind the temperatures, so you're staying inside. If it's 30 degrees with the Humidex, if it's anything more than that, you shouldn't be exercising outside. Move it indoors to where it's air conditioned, or head outside when the temperature drops a little bit. Okay, no questions. So hope everybody's doing well, and yeah, we'll be talking to you again next week with another mini talk.